Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. I wanted to share my screen in 2 minutes to explain what the new COP on the Block series is. Do you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So a new Co-op on the Block is a way to introduce new cooperatives born in year 2022 or 2021 to the public in Northern Ireland. Just to make aware that there are new cooperatives on the block in our part of the country. This is a series that is actually supported by the Belfast City Council support programs for social enterprises and cooperatives, and delivered by Cooperative Alternatives, that is the organization hosting the event today. The agenda will be a brief introduction, this one, and then I will pass everything to John McBride, the founding member of Northern Construction Cooperative. Then we will have a small session, or a shorter session, I should say, to really question and answer if we have some. Let me tell you a bit more about what we do with the Belfast City Council support program. Well, we create webinars and events on cooperatives. We can put these events on our library, and these events are for October have been two. And we introduced just a couple of weeks ago the Belfast Student Housing Cooperative on the 5th of October. If you're interested on that recording, look at our website. You will find that on our website. In November, we have Dr. Eddie Perrin, that if you remember was an intern for a long time in Cooperative Alternatives, coming back to Queens, hopefully on the 25th of November, but please check out our diary of events because that can change. And she will present her PhD on workers' cooperative in Northern Ireland. Also, we have a piece of work that has been done by the University College Cork intern during the summer on cooperative development in Northern Ireland, and that will be in December and presented by Tebibu. And that was the intern from University College Cork. So two pieces of interesting pieces of studies on cooperative and cooperative development. Just to remind you that the social economy support, the city, Belfast City Council support for the social economy, you can find all this on their website, but don't miss the deadline of Social Economy Incentive Fund that it's on the 20th of October for anybody that has really already availed of the support of the program. You can also have a lot of information on cooperative support on our website, and here are some of our pages. Remember that there are some new frequently asked questions that you can actually browse if you are interested in cooperatives, what they are and how they work. Here are some, but here it's the end of my intervention and introduction, and let me talk or introduce to you the Northern Construction. John McBride is one of the founding members. Has been a pleasure working with John. He has plenty of experience in the construction actual sector, and he wanted to put a good use his experience to create a cooperative structure. But let us hear now from John. Thank you. John, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, I was just, I'm just going to share my screen, if that's okay.
Yeah, you can.
Okay, can we see that okay? Was that yes? Sorry.
Yes, John.
Yeah, okay. So thanks for the introduction, Tiziana, and sort of organizing today's session. So as mentioned, we're going to talk about this Northern Construction Cooperative today, which we put forward as an alternative proposal to traditional construction contracting. So a bit about us and kind of how this came about. So we were formed early in 2022, probably around sort of February kind of time onwards. But the makeup of what is kind of in the background of the co-op's been there for a while and stuff, you know. So just kind of observations and conversations I've had with sort of colleagues and people that work in the industry kind of over the years. Some of our sort of issues and grievances and, you know, the same sort of persistent problems appearing on different projects, different jobs, all sort of common themes, not isolated problems in any way whatsoever, very much repetitive. And you know, basically the same things coming up and over and over again. So, you know, with this sort of stuff done, at times, you know, it can seem like it becomes just the way it is, you know, that these problems can never be addressed or kind of solved. And you know, going through years of this kind of thing with people and stuff, and it's started to take more of an approach of, you know, we have to try something, you know, to improve the industry and kind of make things a bit better, a bit more equitable, and a bit more kind of in favor of the people that carry out these works. So I got together with a couple of other sort of trades professionals and design team sort of professionals. So those would be in more sort of management kind of positions, say, you know, be it architects, surveyors, civil engineers, and then tradespeople themselves, like the electricians, the plumbers, that kind of thing. So the idea was kind of to bring both of those groups together to look at sort of alternative ideas. So we kind of, you know, coalesced our thoughts and got a few things together, and then we actually, you know, started to reach out and kind of looking at maybe formalizing this and kind of, you know, work towards addressing some of these issues. So we were supported by Cooperative Alternatives, represented today by Tiziana, and we entered the Belfast City Council Go Social Fund to receive some sort of support to incubate the cooperative and some of our ideas. So we started to move on, and it became a more sort of formal organization. We became registered as a cooperative on the Mutual Register. This summer, became a member of Cooperatives UK and listed on Belfast City Council Social Economic Register and with Social Enterprise NI. So now we're starting to kind of move forward, recruit new members, look at sort of the next stages and some of the where we're going kind of next. So I'll just jump into some of those kind of key reasons that I mentioned before. So whether it be in NI or anywhere else, public sector procurement opportunities are often out of reach of the sort of small, not just the small medium enterprise to a certain degree, but the actual smaller kind of self-employed tradespeople, and, you know, those with sort of small numbers within the company who, believe it or not, make up approximately, you know, 50% of the industry itself. So these people are often locked out of these opportunities just because of the sort of resources and expertise required to go through, say, the public tendering processes that come up on platforms like eTenders NI. So the work that's on there is, you know, typically there's about 3 billion worth of government work in a pipeline. With the small enterprises that make up most of the industry not having the resources to access this. So I mean, the sort of organizations that do kind of pick up these contracts, whether it be, you know, for, say, the housing executive, for NI Water, utilities, schools, TransLink, healthcare. These kind of things are usually picked up by, you know, a number of sort of larger companies, sometimes multinationals, that do have this sort of dedicated teams and resources to solely focus on winning these contracts, whereas the smaller persons don't. So it would be disingenuous to say that, you know, these tradespeople can't access these contracts at all ever. They do sometimes get subcontracting opportunities, but what comes down to the person that doesn't tender for the project at all is typically not the sort of best element of the work. There'll be a high sort of inherent risk transferred to that person by the larger organizations, and there will also be margins put on top of their work, so they won't necessarily receive what has been tendered for by the larger organization. They'll effectively put a markup on the cost of works performed. So like we kind of see that as an issue, you know, particularly when government bodies and the UK government in the sort of construction sector playbook is looking at supply chains and recognizing there's an issue with small and social medium enterprises being locked out of public sector procurement, and you know there's measures brought in to kind of promote that and change it. But it's all well and good bringing that as a policy, but until that sort of fundamental problem is kind of addressed with the sort of resource gap, it's very sort of difficult for those companies to access these opportunities. So, and not only in keeping with that, that's kind of a main focus of the cooperative. There's a lot of other sort of background issues that relate to these kind of problems that we were talking about as well. So, I mean, it might be a bit of a misconception that the people tend to think that construction workers are highly paid. But statistically, when you actually drill into it, that the wages, cost of employment, employee taxes, pension payments, etc., per hour worked in construction is consistently higher for the whole economy than it is for construction. So what that's saying is that the all-in sort of benefits for other industries are typically higher than they are for construction. So at face value, it may look like construction workers are being paid well, but they typically have to work more hours for that and do not receive the other benefits that perhaps people in more sort of long-term stable employment receive. The industry has the highest level of insolvencies of any industry. That's kind of across the board. Surveys, 38% of temporary workers in Northern Ireland do not know how much longer they can expect to be working for their current company. And that's a common theme in sort of my kind of work experience, that I will often, you know, guys will come to me and sort of ask, you know, how long have we got left in the site? How long have we got, you know, trying to plan, you know, their kind of future work and where they're going to be in a month or 2 months' time. So that's quite common. You know, whoever's employing them or contracting them currently may keep them on. They may not. It sort of depends on their workload, their pipeline, whatever's happening. So I mean, it can be very difficult then to sort of, you know, organize your life and your kind of family around that when you're not too sure if you're going to have work in 2 months' time. So yeah, on top of that, 25% of workers do not know how much longer they will stay on their current site. Further employment conditions. So work-life balance is negligible in the industry, and burnout is common. So there's often a knock-on effect on mental health and family life. 81% of construction workers in Northern Ireland work between 40 and 49 hours per week, and 9% work more than 50 hours per week. So if we're looking at that, the numbers on it, 10% only work less than 40 hours a week, which, you know, is way sort of above statutory limits. So the working arrangements themselves are notoriously inflexible. It could be a case you have to be on site at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and you're there until the day's done. It's, taking a day off to go and do something is, whether it be a hospital appointment or something, picking up children from school, is, in my experience, and probably of the others involved in the co-op and outside the co-op, is very sort of difficult, and is just non-workable basically when you approach your employer about it. So the long work hours cultures, there's a prevailing view that it comes with the job, and anything less, it's a lack of commitment. So it is kind of drilled into you that, this is the way it's done, and traditionally that way. If you want to take time off or something, be it even, if you have sort of kind of health issues and stuff as well, that you're sort of discouraged. I mean, companies have sort of brought in sort of more conscious kind of policies recently, but they don't filter down always to the guys that are sort of at the bottom of the hierarchy in the pyramid, those that are working for themselves. Another example of the conditions regarding sort of work-life balance is the statistic that women leave the sector at a faster rate than men, even though they are already underrepresented in the industry itself, and they're often citing cultural reasons and lack of flexible working, which forces a decision between family and career. So going into more, I mean, I could go on all day about these sort of issues, but a third of the sector are approaching retirement age, so more people are retiring than young people coming into the industry. So I work in further education and higher education as well as construction itself, as a part-time lecturer, and I can even tell you firsthand the numbers that come through are not enough to replace those that are retiring every year. And it is not an attractive industry for new people going into it. So at the same time as we have this issue, we have government policy promoting recruitment to the industry, that I think they realize that how important it is, and how the sort of contributing fact, how they'll contribute the sort of the stuff like climate change policy that the government signed up to deliver by say 2050 and other sort of targets, how important the construction industry is. But from what I see firsthand on the ground, that those targets are not being met currently. So of potential workers outside the industry that were surveyed, only 2% considered construction to be a preferred industry, with most other fields more attractive than construction. And the industry is deemed the least attractive of 10 essential industries through another sort of construction industry training board survey. So, I mean, there's a lot of negativity and stuff in there, and there is a lot more to it than that. That's kind of just scratching the surface, but kind of what we would propose to do differently than that. So we provide a platform that could access public sector contracts. So that could be in the form of us taking on sort of the insurances that are required to access those, and to sort of meet the pre-qualification requirements. So we could actually, bring in these self-employed contractors and sort of other employment routes as well, to bring these people in to access the kind of work. We welcome the public sector's investment in improving and sourcing contracting public works projects and programs, and commitment to including third sector organizations like us in their public supply chain. So for example, with DFI's strategies of creating a diverse supply chain to deliver and contract, include new business entrepreneurs, startups, SMEs, and CVSEs. So coming back to the point that I made earlier, all sort of government organizations are now, bringing in measures to promote this, but there's no sort of real change coming through procurement that will allow it. bar, particularly, say social value clauses and stuff, but how they're being implemented, it's still quite early with them to see kind of how they'll work. So we propose a worker-owned and organized cooperative that can adopt the contracting and commercial strategies that benefits members. Cooperative members will decide how profits are used and based on a democratic one member, one vote basis. Within our cooperative, there's no profit value extraction by outside investors. So we don't have those, excessive overheads that say a traditional construction company could have with its sort of large head offices and large director salaries and dividends paid to them. Workers would have a greater say in their training and career development. So this is sort of a key concept of the cooperative, and that as the workers within it are sort of the owners and do have a democratic vote and say in the direction of the co-op, we feel it's important then that they, if they would wish to do so, take up opportunities to learn further stuff on, say, construction contracts and commercial management of construction, rather than being sort of confined in a traditional sort of hierarchy model of being, told what to do and not to worry about certain things. So we can look to benefit from local government commitments to social value and fair payment practices, which are coming in being promoted by CPD and the likes. They actually would sort of help an organization like ourselves that we know we're going to get paid on a monthly basis, provided we do the work that we're contracted for, and we're kind of not at the mercy of, say, a large contractor that may or may not pay us, which again is a real sort of negative aspect of the industry, where small contractors are withheld payment and have little recourse to address that. So other things, we can promote social support and cohesion within the cooperative itself, and give people sort of more meaningful and rewarding work. So a little on our structure. So as mentioned before, the cooperative operates on a one member, one share, one vote basis, where votes and shares are non-transferable. A committee of board directors, which myself and two others are members at the moment, are democratically elected by and from the employee members. So it's important there is no majority shareholders, and one worker equals one share. And the shares within the cooperative are non-transferable, so there's no outside kind of extraction at all. So it's owned and controlled by its members. We're democratic. Every member contributes financially in some way. That can be from buying products, working for the co-op, investing, deciding how to spend its profits or reinvest in them. We're independent and owned and controlled by its members only. The educational and training attainment is promoted within the cooperative as well. We do commit to cooperating with other co-ops where possible, and we commit to supporting the communities we work with, because it's where our members are from. So the membership of the cooperative itself, it's open to anyone with experience or interest in construction related occupations or roles. We do have a list on the next slide that's indicative of potential members, but isn't by no means exclusive. So we accept expressions of interest from other fields that can help us. So this is a example of some typical kind of trades that could be, may well want to get involved, but again, by no means kind of exclusive. And we have a bit of a roadmap. So we've kind of gone through our concept phase. We formed a steering group. We've been incorporated and we're still looking at finance options to put in place our sort of trading prerequisites, which we'll get to on this kind of next slide, and then kind of look to be operational. So at the moment we're at the trading prerequisite stage, which basically our trading prerequisites are some of the insurances that are required to sort of to operate within the public sector, and which will be typically be a requirement of, say, the public bodies that I mentioned before, being a sort of Northern Ireland Housing Executive or any sort of other CPD contract will require these. So you could, a construction company can operate without these, or some of them to a certain degree, but it wouldn't sort of fit with the cooperative's values to kind of to potentially cut corners or not be completely covered with stuff. So we have been very selective on work that we've kind of taken out so far, and had to actually turn down some opportunities, just because the cooperative sales, we felt like we weren't completely covered to do the work. So there is costs associated with these sort of these insurances, and we're kind of like looking for grants and sort of funding opportunities at the moment to help us pay for this. But this covers most of our sort of prerequisites for procurement, public sector procurements. And then we've a bit more of a roadmap for where we're going in the longer term. So kind of once we get our insurances and prerequisites in place, we can look at sort of small kind of direct award kind of small kind of value opportunities that can allow us to sort of build up a trading history. Also, something else that's quite important for public sector contracting is demonstrating that sort of experience. So we'll look at small opportunities, potentially other opportunities with cooperatives or sort of community organizations to build up that sort of repertoire of work. And then once sort of we get past that, we can start going more for more higher value sort of works and tendering and so on there, basically from that. So I appreciate there was a lot in there, and I kind of was a bit conscious of time and tried to rush through it a little bit, but I hope there's some sort of questions I can answer on it, and potentially sort of expand a bit further on some of the ideas. Certainly we've identified a lot of issues with the industry and stuff, and it's not to say that we can sort of solve every problem kind of overnight with our approach, but we feel it creates a sort of a good platform to kind of explore working towards solutions a little more than what's currently out there.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for your presentation. If you want, very good. Maybe anyone has some questions to John?
If I'm late, Susanna, thank you, John, for that. And yes, you packed an awful lot into a very short space of time.
Probably too much.
Well, of course, the construction industry is so complex, and it's so legal and has quite rightly so many regulations that it must follow for everybody's to everybody's benefit. But I wasn't clear. You're offering. I got at the start that you were offering almost like a platform where you would handle, at least initially, you could handle, as you say, the pre-qualification issues, pre-tender PQQs, and a guidance, I suppose, a mentoring role. Towards the end, I wondered if you were actually, in some of the final slides over the next couple of years, were you talking more about actually building a full spectrum construction company with
Yes,
your members? It was, rather than platform, you seem to be evolving beyond that.
Yeah, that's right. To be the actual sort of company within itself, and they either give the opportunity of smaller companies to potentially subcontract to us, but also for people to work with us directly as say an employee. The reason for that approach is from startup point of view, there just wouldn't be the capital within the cooperative to employ people on a direct basis. So if we're sort of looking at how we would manage our sort of cash flow on any potential job or multiple jobs at once, we just wouldn't, because we don't want to take in sort of any outside investment. There just wouldn't be any capital to pay salaries at the start. But yes, we absolutely would look at becoming sort of an organization in its own right, because it's no sort of different to what I see out there anyway. I see large companies that they can more or less subcontract out all their packages and actually act as a management contractor. It is a a procurement route that's kind of out there. So you could look at it that way. We wouldn't sort of see it that way. We'd sort of give holistic kind of support to whoever's in the cooperative. So does that kind of make sense, rather than?
Yes, where you're starting from, but then evolutionary, you're building out from that on a more organic way. Yes, I can get that. You don't maybe tease out a wee bit more on the procurement. And I know there are lots of issues with different types of contracts as well as.
Absolutely, yeah.
We've been saddled with a lot of NEC contracts, for example, that at times you think it is a horrendously complicated contract for sometimes quite simple actual jobs,
Absolutely.
But the development, I know there's a lot of work going on at the moment on procurement and, as you say, social value clauses, on fair treatment down the chain to subbies, etc. It came across as maybe not being that confident, leaving it just to the open market, that you feel this cooperative approach is more sustainable for those working in the I'm just wondering why.
I do feel it is more sustainable. Well, it depends on which way you look at it. So the focus on the cooperative at the moment is sort of no private sector work at all. Even though, in recent years, there's been sort of relative economic growth, particularly, in Northern Ireland itself. But if we're in the private sector, we're kind of, at the mercy of sort of main contractors among payment terms and this and that. And, there is contractual remedies, be it a JCT contract, which is more likely if it is the private sector. Well, we could still have our NEC as well, even though it's not the public sector. But, there is methods, and it is unfortunately, the commercial strategy of bigger contractors to transfer their risk as much as possible and put the squeeze on the subcontractors. So we're taking the approach that the public sector may suit kind of our aims better, in that you're essentially providing essential work for a start. I don't know how, if we're making the cooperative, working sort of like commercial land speculation and stuff. That's always where the highest risk is, and we could have issues with the main contractor. In the public sector, we have NEC payment terms, which we're familiar with. So for applications for payment or pay less notices and stuff. And the sort of commitment to fair payment practices that we'll be familiar with, that sort of could help sustain a cooperative when we know, as long as we fulfill our terms and conditions, that payment won't be withheld for any sort of legitimate reason. So we do have more sort of confidence in that approach. And in a perfect world, there would be no need for a cooperative. But the small sort of self-employed guys can't access those terms, even if they're say they are being subcontracted to somebody, a main contractor on that. They're going to be third tier, and sort of they're not as protected by fair payment practices. They usually fall in between the first and second tier. Once you start to get that far down, he's at the mercy again. He's not sort of covered that way. He's like completely sort of peripheral or ancillary to the contract when he's at that stage. There'll be no project bank account for that guy. There'll be no some of the other practices that are in it. So when I say platform, you could sort of see it, transfer the name with a contracting identity or contracting organization, basically is what the public sector term is. So that's what we would be, a contracting organization. So we would act in that same manner, only that we are given a fair commitment to, we're going to pay that guy, we're going to pay him fair. Does that, or I know there's a lot in it and stuff, and we could definitely
Well, it's the issues I think that procurement, for example, is trying to address, and very much required and necessary. It seems you're putting an extra layer on top of that again, which in a very innovative way, and I suppose exempling best behavior, best practice through how you operate, that would encourage and maybe impact on practice more generally. So it's certainly another approach and another.
It's an interesting way or a point, because I seen us as actually taking out a layer of management rather than adding another one in. That the workers in the cooperative, it is self-organizing to do sort of self-management. So I felt that we're actually sort of stripping out that layer. It's kind of, and I work in sort of management myself, so I'm part of the problem. Like huge layers of management that give conflicting messages or big overhead on projects, an organization, when the level and the types of works that we're going for needs sort of very sort of little levels of management. We can kind of be a lot leaner cutting out those overheads, so potentially more competitive bids, and that we're not sort of subsidizing huge management overheads.
And you're actually making what the procurement rules would like to see happen. Through your organization, that way of organizing, you're exemplaring it, because that's exactly how the values you're bringing.
And like I was speaking about our trading prerequisites, and that how we're not jumping in just the things. We do want to make sure all the ducks are in order, that the clients, you're delivering a quality product. We're not driven like other sort of contracting organizations to buy jobs, with sort of disingenuous sort of methods of like, putting in zero rates against stuff or whatever, just to actually buy a contract. We're only sort of focused on maybe delivering what we potentially can. So with all that sort of stuff, we think we could provide a better sort of value for money option, better and quality product than say some of the private sector organizations could.
Thank you. Thank you, John and Nolan. This is a great conversation. We have a couple of comments, John, in the chat. You wanted to address those comments?
Let's see. Okay.
Yeah.
Author for worker co-op over a consortium co-op of freelance. So yeah, that kind of ties into what we were talking about. We thought with Nolan there, we mentioned about sort of the early days and then transferring into sort of more that workers cooperative. So at the start, yeah, it's more of a consortium kind of model, but it's not to say that it's workers are shut out or either or. It's a bit of sort of a hybrid at the start, depending on kind of what sort of contracts we're kind of involved in. But why is it not a complete workers co-op from the start? It is, and it depends on the terminology, but I think I sort of addressed that reason with Nolan about a salary, a whole payroll to pay at the start. It just wouldn't be feasible at all to get it off the ground. And so co-op people for doing retro work and council contracts for this work would be fantastic. Yeah, so it's the kind of stuff we kind of have in mind. Any potential works that don't have, huge overheads, like civil engineering works that require a lot of plant, there could necessarily be out of reach, for us at the moment. But certainly stuff that's very skill dependent, and where it'll just benefit from effective management and say good material management, good tradesmanship, and not huge overheads. So the kind of examples that Anise mentioned there would be great for us.
Thank you very much. And just to say that our region it's a bit behind any other region of the UK, and we don't have yet a strategy on how to retrofit our old stock, unfortunately. So that's one of the obstacles we have. Maybe that is not common to England or Scotland or Wales. One thing, John, I was at the Social Enterprise Award ceremony, as I told you, during the weekend. The Minister of Finance, Conor Murphy, said publicly that he's going to push social value at 20% of a contract by April 2023. Now, I don't know if it was an empty promise, but surely, given that they don't even know if they will be in government in the next couple of weeks. So, it's easy to promise when you know that you are not going to be there.
Yeah, well, but, it's interesting, but it's all how it gets implemented, because a couple of examples I've seen so far, it's just the contractor will put something in, and then bill it to sort of it's going on the bid anyway. The client is paying for it, the public sector is paying for it, so it has to be something that's effective, and rather than just a tick the box kind of. I mean, it's an opportunity for us, some of these things, but it has to be something meaningful, I think, as well.
So you are saying that the 20% will be paid because the cost will be inflated. And
well, it won't be inflated, but the whatever bodies, the public sector, or sorry, the departments will be paying for it. So I hope they get a good sort of value for money output from it. So how the contractors are delivering it needs to be something that's kind of needs some attention.
Yeah. Indeed, the social value has been, around for as a concept, been around for so many years, but I think that we are yet to understand fully the implication of it.
Yeah, that's
And,
it.
and mostly the way we can monitor it and
Yeah, so
what we want to
it
get
is.
out of it. Yeah.
It's a great initiative, and it's a great, commitment from him. But it's a good opportunity to do it right and not
Yeah.
become something that wasn't what it was intended to be.
And I saw other workers' cooperative around the world, and sometimes the cooperative around the world, especially workers' cooperative, do. I'm thinking about Mondragon in particular.
Mhm.
I remember that they had some entrance fees for the
Yeah.
workers. Is it something that you see a merit into it or not? I mean, at the end of the day, it's like raising capital from your own membership.
Yeah, I can see why they do it, and it is maybe is more of a test to determine if their workers are really serious about joining and benefiting. It wouldn't certainly be something we would look at from the start. I think that it's all well and good me here talking about this and stuff today, but how this will actually work is by demonstrating that an actual project to potential for further members that would like to join. Actions speak louder than words. We all know that. So when we get to the stage that we are kind of doing work and kind of looking to expand, I wouldn't really see us kind of like putting up that barrier initially for people joining. Yeah, I would say if they meet our sort of there
I'm
is
just
in two ways.
thinking, John, unfortunately, cooperatives do not get the support or access to
Yeah.
capital as any other enterprise. If you were a big business, you can go to any bank and demand a big loan without any problem. But because for us, cooperative movement, what is very difficult is the startup capital. And this is why we are looking inwards more than looking outwards, because we know the government is not going to come in our help, and the private sector, like a big financial institution, are not. So it's the only reason. Sometimes self-help in cooperative terms means really find also the money to start. And that's a bit of, the limits that we have to.
Yeah, I see what you mean there about internal cooperative, but certainly it has been given consideration in sort of finance and costs of running the business, but we're very much kind of focused on our overheads being small tools and plant, which I have my own, other tradespeople have their own. They're kind of bringing, that's kind of what we're looking to bring to the table straight away. To help us kind of keep it lean. And then once we are starting to trade, and money's coming through the door, then we can kind of sort of look at how we need money to grow and stuff. But I completely agree that finance from the inside rather than from being on the outside. As soon as we have a different entity or an external body investing in the company, we kind of lose a certain degree of autonomy. And we can't pick and choose which projects we'd like to do.
But John, has been fascinating. You have a wealth of knowledge of the industry, and you try to convey that to us. Thank you, pedestrians as we are in this world. But thank you for taking the issue to us, taking also a solution to us, and choosing that cooperative structure. John, can be a very forward-looking way for an industry that has been mistreated, and for the people in that industry. That some of the statistics that you give us really made me kind of shiver, to be quite honest. How mistreat people that we all need of, even in my house, in anybody else's. So I think that you brought quite an interesting outlook to this old problem, and also a good, solution to it. I hope that you will get some of the contracts. I know that you are going around like a month to look for contracts, but also to start to work with your members and try to bring to our attention. We needed to open our eyes more often. Definitely on this world. Thank you, John.
No,
Noli,
thank you.
thank you. Thank you. And we close here. Bye-bye now.
Okay, thanks.